What he said is very important, and it's especially important here in Nevada, because the last time I checked, I think you still have the highest unemployment rate in the country. Is that still right? Over 7%, I think. So you have a lot of people who used to have jobs, and you have a lot of people who used to be able to work full-time who now can only get part-time jobs. And you have a lot of people who need help, and they need the kind of assistance he was talking about. I will do everything I can to try to make sure that we continue to provide the supports that individuals and families deserve. I would like to see everybody get a good job with a decent income that has rising opportunity and a paycheck that reflects their hard work. That will be my primary mission. But while we're trying to get there, we've got to do more to help people who are doing the best they can. You know, nobody who works full-time in America should still be in poverty. That is just, to me, backwards. So, you know, as I said, I work for the Children's Defense Fund. I was on the Legal Services Corporation, where we defended a lot of the rights of people to get access to benefits that they needed for themselves and their children. So I come from that kind of background, and I will do what I can to make sure that we remember those who are struggling. I want to be a president for the struggling, the striving, and the successful. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure our country doesn't turn our backs on people who need help. Food stamps, housing help, earned income tax credit, the whole list. And the final thing I would say about this is, you know, I don't say this from a partisan or a personal perspective. It's just a fact. The economy needs the kind of continuing leadership provided by having a Democrat in the White House. I think if you look at it, you know that both my husband and President Obama inherited problems from their predecessors. And both of them were dealt a very tough hand to play. President Obama was dealt a disastrous hand to play. And I remember within like a day or two of Bill getting elected, he says to me, "It's so much worse than they told us." And he had to work really hard, but we got the economy going for everybody. People on the bottom and in the middle saw their incomes rise just like people on the top, and we ended up with 23 million new jobs. And then when President Obama was elected, he called me a few days after the election. He asked me to come see him. I didn't know why. It turned out he wanted me to be Secretary of State, which I was very honored by. And so, the first words out of his mouth is, "It's so much worse than they told us." I said, "You know, Mr. President-elect, I've heard that." And it was. We were tottering on the brink of a Great Depression, not just a Great Recession. And President Obama does not get the credit he deserves for pulling us out of that. Talking about the other side, because we've got a proven track record of doing what works better, and now we just need another Democratic president to build on the successes of these two terms, because otherwise we're just going back to the land of trickle-down economics, one of the worst ideas of the 1980s, along with shoulder pads and big hair and like that. So I want you, when you talk to your friends and neighbors who maybe are not so convinced about the choice we should be making, to remind them, why does it always take a Democratic president to fix the problems that the Republicans Here comes the microphone. It's coming around.
How you doing, Secretary Clinton?
Fine, thank
My
you.
name is Leandra McGee. My study of major is criminal justice, and I wonder, what are you going to do as President of the United States to address the criminal justice system and the mass incarceration rates in the United States?
Good question. You know, first of all, I'm glad you're in criminal justice, because we need young men like you who will be ready to help get back into a more fair and balanced kind of system that doesn't exist at the moment. And I've said this all over the country, on the federal level and certainly in states across America, decisions were made in the 80s and 90s to deal with what was, at that time, a very high crime rate that was particularly affecting poor people, people of color in the city. Some I see heads nodding. You remember those days. And I think that a lot was done that went further than it needed to go. And so now we are facing problems with mass incarceration. And let me just tell you why that's a problem. It's a problem because in our country we have too many people in jail and prison who committed low-level, non-violent offenses. And we have too many people who haven't been convicted of anything but can't afford bail, and sometimes are there for months, if not years. And we know for a fact that if you take an African-American young man and you take a young white man and they do the same thing, the rates of arrest, of incarceration, of conviction for the young African-American man is much higher. And so we have to address these inequities, these injustices. And there are some good thinking going on about it. President Obama has a policing commission that has some good recommendations. First speech I gave in this campaign was about mass incarceration and body cameras for police officers. But we also have to look at how we do more to prevent people from ending up on the brink of being arrested or finding themselves incarcerated. And we have to look at the other end of the pipeline about how we provide more opportunity when somebody comes out. Because right now there's just not the kind of systems and programs that are going to help young men in particular find a better path forward. So I think there's a lot we can do, and there's some good thinking. If you haven't read the President's Policing Commission, I recommend it to you. It was a good cross-section of experts, police chiefs, activists, etc. And I think if we were to follow that roadmap, and the last thing I'll say is, this is one of the few areas where maybe we are going to get bipartisan agreement. Actually, there are Republicans working with Democrats to make some of these changes at the federal level. However, most of what needs to be done has to happen on the state level. So the federal government has to set the example, and we have to demonstrate that we're not going to continue to militarize our streets by sending basically weapons of war to our streets. We have to use any federal dollars that go to support local law enforcement to do more training and more work to make sure that our police officers are better able to deal with the realities that they are facing and not overreact. So I think there's a lot here, and that's why I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. It's very important that young people like yourself do that.